Welcome to the MacArthur Foundation's 100&Change Finalist Forum. Please welcome President of the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, John Palfrey.
Hello, I'm John Palfrey, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you to the MacArthur Foundation 100&Change Finalist Forum. We are not in person, but we are together, and I'm deeply grateful to be in community with you and engaged in such important work. 2020 was a year like no other. We know that times of deep uncertainty can become times of transformational growth. We watched as scientists from all over the world banded together to develop a vaccine for a global pandemic in an unprecedented amount of time. And it wasn't only the scientists who were thinking big. We saw one of the largest social justice movements in our nation's history with the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. And every one of us tapped new reserves of resilience every day to keep our families safe and to care for our communities. The cracks in our foundation have been exposed over the past year. Our mounting crises are now laid bare for everyone to see. But in those cracks, there is light. As a society, we can see our shortcomings just as we can see the possibility all around us to think bigger, to do more, to be bolder. Preventing disease, ending homelessness, preserving our oceans, saving lives and telling our stories, this is work that repairs our bonds and gives us a common sense of purpose. The finalists you are going to hear from today are bringing about the kind of global change that will be felt by millions, not just in the lives saved, but in the lives restored, the health of our planet, and the strength of our democracy. I am so grateful and so excited to be bringing you solutions. Their ideas are as inspiring as they are possible. And I want to thank you for being with us today and joining us along this incredible journey. You are in exceptionally good hands with Cecilia Conrad, who will be hosting our program, and I will see you after the presentations. Thank you again for thinking big with us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cecilia Conrad, and I am extraordinarily grateful to have this role today and to serve as Managing Director of 100&Change throughout the competition. I had the great joy of reading 475 ambitious, insightful, and high-impact submissions of problem solvers across the country and around the world. During the spring of the last challenging year, I had a ritual. Every morning, I would read through a few 100&Change grant proposals, and I would feel better. Some called it hope scrolling. I have found so much hope and optimism in the work we are bringing you today. It is humbling to see how big these ideas are, and yet they are each evidence-based, feasible, and durable. Today, we will all get to be part of making these ideas a reality. To help these teams match the scale of the problems they address. I want to thank everyone who has participated in this process. I want to thank all of you who lift up and amplify this incredible work. If you've connected a project with a new donor, made an additional grant, brought in a finalist to speak at an institution, everything you do adds to the good we are able to put in the world. And this year, we need as much good as we can possibly get. Today, we are going to hear from 3 of our 6 finalists. Each finalist will be introduced by an expert in their field. And after the presentation, I will moderate a brief Q&A. These finalists have been working for months with teams of expert advisors to make their proposals as strong as possible to make a sustained impact on the world. These finalists and their projects will change lives, not just the 100 million grant recipient, but every organization and collaboration represented here today. I am thrilled to finally be able to introduce them to you. First up is Community Solutions. The goal of Community Solutions is to accelerate the end of homelessness in 75 communities within 5 years. I repeat, end homelessness in 75 communities. Remember, I said that these are big ideas. More than 1.5 million children and adults experience homelessness each year in the United States. Becoming homeless can shorten a person's life by years. It results in poor health outcomes, interrupted education, chronic unemployment, and lifelong trauma. Community Solutions brings a data-driven public health alternative to our long-standing approaches. They work directly with communities, identifying homeless individuals as individuals and creating the change necessary to end homelessness altogether, which they have accomplished already in 13 communities where they've worked. To introduce Community Solutions, I'd like to present the CEO of Funders Together to End Homelessness, Amanda Andere. Amanda has spent her life's work committed to racial and housing justice. Our homelessness crisis is deeply intertwined with systemic racism, and our most vulnerable neighbors are falling through cracks that could be repaired with effort. I want to thank Amanda for her tireless work on this issue and welcome her here today. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I've worked on the issues of housing insecurity, poverty, and homelessness for almost all my life. And the number one question I get asked is, why? It's because I fundamentally believe the health of a country and a community is reflected in their ability to make housing possible for everyone. During this global pandemic, we have been confronted with the reality that staying at home is not possible for everyone. And during this country's reckoning with racial injustice, we have been reminded that housing is at the center of the disparities we see play out in all of our systems. For me, there is no racial justice until there is housing justice. And that begins with ending homelessness that disproportionately impacts Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. But is ending homeless possible? It is if we recognize that homelessness is not a result of personal failure, so we don't need to fix people. It is a result of broken systems rooted in structural racism and years of disinvestment in communities, as well as investing in the wrong policies and practices. We know that housing ends homelessness, but we can't build our way out of the crisis we are facing now. And the next finalist, Community Solutions, so effectively demonstrates housing alone is not the solution. At Funders Together to End Homelessness, I work with over 250 foundations, corporations, United Ways, and individual donors from across the United States committed to preventing and ending homelessness through racial and housing justice. For the last 10 years, we have seen that ending homelessness is possible when local communities work in public-private partnership to focus on systems change. When we invest in leaders charged with ending homelessness to think and act differently, but most importantly, to be held accountable to data, I've seen housing justice become possible. This is the work of Community Solutions, a data-driven organization that understands what it takes to bring people together around a common goal. And what is exciting about their model is we can use those same approaches to address other persistent and pervasive problems that prevent our communities from being healthy and vibrant. When we focus on listening to people with lived expertise and center racial equity in our work, we're not just putting a Band-Aid on a problem. We are beginning to understand and uproot the causes that lead to homelessness, and we can start to make lasting change. When we focus on the political and public will in communities to make housing possible for all people, the narrative changes from homelessness being an intractable problem to one that says ending homelessness will bring housing security to our community, and that means better outcomes in health and education. We often hear about the social determinants of health being so deeply connected to housing. I deeply believe these are the social determinants of life. That the true test of lives mattering in our communities is our ability to make a basic need like a home possible. I'm thrilled to introduce a team working to do exactly that, Community Solutions.
Homelessness is the canary in the coal mine. It tells us about the equity of a society, about the health of a population, about the capacity of communities to solve complex problems. Before the pandemic, an estimated 568,000 people experienced homelessness on a given night, disproportionately Black and Native Americans. Now, the economic crisis threatens many more with the loss of their homes. Homelessness is a problem more costly to ignore than to solve. Annually, more than $12 billion is spent reacting to the problem. But it doesn't need to be this way. Homelessness affects less than 1% of the population. Communities can eliminate it. Decades ago, our team began with what seemed like the most obvious solution. We developed more affordable housing for people experiencing homelessness than anyone else in the country. But homelessness in our city continued to rise. It prompted a reckoning. If housing alone wasn't the solution, what was needed to reach a lasting end to homelessness for everyone? We went directly to those experiencing homelessness, and what they described was sobering. The dozens of programs operating separately, each with their own roles, trapped people in a maze of homelessness. Despite everyone's good intentions, we were part of a broken system perpetuating homelessness, with money being thrown at a problem no one fully understood or was accountable for. This was the key problem that had to be solved. That's why Community Solutions created Built for Zero, a movement of 84 cities and counties proving the power of an operating system designed to end homelessness. Adapted from the global health victories of the past half-century, Built for Zero represents a new paradigm matched to the complex, shifting nature of homelessness itself. More than half of our communities are reducing homelessness, including red and blue communities of every size. 14 have ended chronic or veteran homelessness, with 0 meaning homelessness is rare and quickly resolved. And 93% did so without new housing supply. We help communities make 5 changes to achieve and sustain zero homelessness. First, to define the problem correctly. Homelessness is dynamic and complex and requires a dynamic, data-driven local system to end it. Second, to build the right team. A single team must be accountable for ending homelessness across the community, with each organization having a clear role to play. Third, to collect the right data. Homelessness is typically tracked using an annual anonymous estimate. Built for Zero communities know every person experiencing homelessness by name in real time. Like COVID, fighting this problem requires real-time information on who is affected and what is working. Fourth, to set the right aim. Our communities embrace one definition of success, whether the number of people experiencing homelessness is going down. They use data and problem-solving tools adapted from other sectors to deliver results. And finally, to close actual housing supply gaps using social impact capital. This is targeted, fast, and ultimately a better use of the $12 billion now spent on a broken status quo. Built for Zero is poised to scale. With your support, we can help a critical mass of diverse communities end homelessness for one or all populations and make this goal achievable and expected everywhere by 2026. Here are some investments we hope you'll consider. Invest in data. A $1 million investment will provide 50 communities with technology-enabled access to data needed to drive reductions. Invest in changing perceptions and policies. With a new administration seeking to solve problems reflected in homelessness, a $5 million investment will support a campaign to hold leaders accountable for ending homelessness and drive a new understanding that homelessness is solvable. This unique political moment creates an unprecedented opportunity to reform failed policies and incentives. And invest in communities. A $10 million investment will leverage a $100 million social impact equity fund to close housing supply gaps for communities close to zero by acquiring existing market rate and hotel properties. We're committed to solving homelessness at a population level. But at the center is knowing each person experiencing it by name. This is Ed Givens. He had endured life on the streets for 17 years when we met him. Thanks to the local team, he was connected to a home. A year later, we got this photo from Ed and an invitation to share his story. We look at it often to remember what's at stake. people reclaiming their lives. Homelessness holds a mirror to our broken systems, to racism, and to failures of accountability throughout our nation's living history. But ending homelessness as a nation would reveal something very different about us and our future. We can make that choice with your help.
Thank you for that inspiring presentation. I am excited to welcome our finalist Community Solutions President, Roseanne Haggerty, and Principals Beth Sandor and Jessica Venegas, who have been leading this important work. Today's questions have been compiled by MacArthur after receiving submissions from everyone participating today. Let's get to it. You noted that $5 million will help your team hold political leaders accountable for addressing homelessness. How can you hold political leaders accountable for homelessness? You're on mute, Roseanne.
Cecilia, thank you so much. And let me just begin by saying that history tells us that evidence alone is not enough, that scaling breakthrough innovations requires shifts in attitudes, in incentives, in policies to create accountability among leaders. So over the next 5 years, we will be repositioning homelessness as the solvable problem that it is. A $5 million investment will expand our policy and communications teams, and a support and education initiative that will run alongside and accelerate the direct work we're doing with communities. The focus of these measures will be federal policies, public expectations, and local leaders. And let me explain why. Current federal policy does not incent ending homelessness. In fact, legacy technology and data requirements hinder communities' progress. And we are all aware of the dominant perception that homelessness is intractable, which has a self-perpetuating reality that limits expectations of local efforts and perpetuates the idea that this is a problem of broken people, not broken systems. And because of these low expectations, local leaders in particular face little expectation or accountability to deliver reductions in homelessness across their population. And so for this reason, we will be expanding our policy focus, working to engage the new administration, Congress, and coalition partners to reform the federal policies to reflect the needs of communities actually doing the work of ending homelessness on the ground. We will be leaning into communications, a critical piece to amplify each milestone and proof point as new communities reach zero chronic homelessness, zero veteran homelessness, or for other populations, as we saw just recently with Bakersfield, California, reaching functional zero for chronic homelessness. The New York Times editorial board, the Los Angeles Times, Bloomberg, Fast Company, local media throughout California picked up on this story and essentially started asking, why isn't this happening everywhere? That's the kind of communications-led accountability that's needed. And then lastly, we will be equipping mayors and county executives in particular with both the accountability expectations and the tools to effectively drive local population level reductions in homelessness with a targeted, multifaceted education and advocacy campaign.
Thank you. Second question, how do you think about the balance and relative prioritization of your deep focus on veteran and chronic homelessness relative to potential expanded focus, particularly in this post-COVID world, on children and families?
I'll take that one. Well, our approach to ending homelessness has been to work with communities to end homelessness across their community for everyone, starting with one population, so that communities can learn together in a smaller scale, shrink the change in order to figure out how to fundamentally restructure their system around a population aim rather than program outcomes. And so our theory has been is if you can do that first with one focused population and then scale out, you'll be able to move faster. And now what we see is we have 14 communities that have ended for veterans or chronic or both, and now are scaling to families, youth, all single adults. We have one community we think is poised to end for all populations by the end of this calendar year. And they've been able to move faster after having started with veterans and chronic. On the inflow, kind of moving upstream, I think, solving complex problems, you're constantly prioritizing where to focus and figure out where the leverage points are. And inflow into homelessness is a huge leverage point for driving reductions in homelessness. And so there are two ways we're really focusing on this. First, we have a cohort of 5 communities. We're going deep in the next 2 years to test a model for getting reliable reductions in inflow, and then hopefully scale that across our network of 84 communities. The second is we've seen healthcare as a key leverage point for working upstream. And so we've partnered with the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, as well as 4 major health systems, to work in the next 2 years to test a theory of change around the catalytic role that health systems can play to drive reductions in chronic homelessness specifically. And we think that that will be a key area of focus that will pay dividends for us. So we're working with Kaiser Permanente, Common Spirit Health, Providence St. Joseph's Health, and Trinity. And so we're focused on that inflow work at the same time, helping communities accelerate their housing placements, but all in the service of seeing that population level reduction, first for one population and then scaling to all.
Thank you. I think there's time for one more question. How do you prioritize what cities or communities you will work in? And can a donor request a specific community?
Yeah, so we prioritize communities first by who is willing to hold themselves accountable for measurable reductions in homelessness. That may seem easy, but actually it's very complicated to get multi-stakeholders across this county or multi-county jurisdiction to all agree that the way we'll measure our collective efforts is if there are fewer people experiencing homelessness or not. So that's the first priority is a community willing to do this with us and really figure this out. And the second is that cohort of 84 communities we're working nationally, we want that to be diverse, a range of small, medium, large, rural, urban, suburban communities, so that we can demonstrate what does it take to do this in any type of context to ensure credibility that this model can work anywhere and that homelessness is solvable. As far as prioritizing, investors prioritizing certain communities, I'll let my colleague Jessica Venegas speak to that.
Yes, and absolutely the answer is yes. And a good number of our core partners actually fund the infrastructure to help support the work across the country, and then additionally make investments to move the needle in their home communities. And so we have a variety of ways that happens, and would love to talk to you more about how best to do that with the investment that you'd like to make.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, the entire Community Solutions team. I think everyone will join me in wishing you luck towards achieving this laudable goal. We're going to turn next to Project Echo. It has been estimated that medical knowledge doubles every 5 years. It can take a lot longer than that to travel to the regions that need it most. Project Echo is making sure that critical knowledge is shared with even the most remote and underserved parts of the world. Their model connects providers in rural or understaffed areas with teams of specialists and cutting-edge learnings. Project Echo plans to train and mentor 1 million local health workers, affecting the lives and health of over 1 billion of the most vulnerable people on earth. When COVID-19 hit, Project Echo realized their model, which was already conducted remotely over Zoom, was needed to meet this urgent crisis. In the past 8 months, they have already trained 740,000 providers in COVID-19 response. To introduce Project Echo, I am happy to welcome Dr. David Barish. Dr. Barish is the executive director of the GE Foundation, leading their work in the field of public health and focusing on surgical improvements in underserved global populations. I want to thank him for this time and expertise and welcome him to our program. Welcome, Dr. Barish.
Thank you for the introduction, Cecilia. I've been a big fan of Project ECHO for a long time, and I'm speaking today both as a funder and as a physician. The ECHO model has substantial implications for global health care systems. ECHO is no doubt changing the world and changing it very, very fast. When the GE Foundation began working with ECHO several years ago, we set 2-year goals for growth and success. ECHO beat the community health center target by more than 70% and more than doubled the new training center hubs target for us, far beyond what we imagined. With ECHO, transformative change happens fast. But there's much more to working with ECHO than just dramatic and high-octane change. One of the critical features of the ECHO model is its extreme plasticity and ability to take on new challenges, even as they just begin to surface. COVID-19 is a great example of this capacity. As you'll see in the video, ECHO programs have trained hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers around the world on how to respond to COVID. Now, ECHO is in the midst of preparing a massive vaccination workforce. Getting complex medical knowledge distributed is not easy. It is indeed one of the world's toughest challenges. Sanjeev Arora saw a problem first in his home state of New Mexico as patients filled the waiting list at his Albuquerque clinic because care was not available closer to home. But he met this challenge first at home and now around the world, and he created a powerful, sustainable, and scalable solution. ECHO is an intuitive model that can be executed with great simplicity, and most importantly, adapted to local needs and circumstances. What works well in Portland, Oregon, can easily be adapted and deployed to work equally well in rural India. In fact, the ECHO model is built on that premise. It starts with the needs of the local community, and like a tidal river, enables knowledge flow in both directions. Furthermore, ECHO's adaptability extends beyond geographic deployments and allows for content and academic discipline diversity. We have supported ECHO's deployment for law enforcement, crisis intervention, and elementary science education, in addition to many other knowledge content areas. And ECHO's model is flexible enough to adapt immediately to new areas of need. We have seen ECHO become a critical component of the response to the opioid crisis here in the United States. And we have most recently seen the model become a powerful solution for rapidly distributing needed knowledge about COVID-19 globally. To me, ECHO at its core is a new operating system for distributing knowledge and creating new knowledge. The world has developed and collected encyclopedic volumes of information, yet there are too many places that do not have access to this intelligence. ECHO has created and proven a powerful model to correct this imbalance, and in the process, correct many serious disparities. ECHO is, at the very least, certainly changing healthcare around the world, and each of you have an opportunity to be part of that change. I know that an investment in Project ECHO will be a smart investment with extraordinary returns in social good and global equity. And now let's watch the video.
The right medical knowledge and expertise in the right hands at the right time could save millions of lives around the world. My name is Sanjeev Arora. I'm a liver disease specialist in New Mexico. In 2003, more than 28,000 New Mexicans had hepatitis C, and my clinic was the only one in the state dedicated to treating this disease. My wait list to see patients was 8 months long. And people were dying while waiting for treatment that might have cured many of them. And that's why I started Project ECHO. Through ECHO, we created a virtual community of practice that resulted in 21 new centers of excellence equipped to treat hepatitis C in New Mexico's rural communities. My wait fell to 2 weeks, and tens of thousands of patients got treatment. But that was only the beginning. Today, ECHO partners in 40 countries operate more than 860 ECHO learning networks, addressing dozens of health problems ranging from hepatitis C and TB to cancer and HIV. In ECHO programs, all teach and all learn. It works like this. Teams of experts at regional medical centers called hubs use video conferencing to engage with local healthcare providers, the spokes, in weekly, ongoing knowledge sharing, case-based learning, and telementoring. Hubs and spokes learn from each other so that everyone's knowledge is constantly improving. Equipped with this new knowledge and support, on-the-ground health workers have the expertise they need to treat patients with serious and difficult conditions. When the coronavirus pandemic struck, we pivoted our resources towards meeting the COVID-19 threat in countries around the world. In 2020, ECHO programs trained hundreds of thousands of health professionals in the COVID-19 response. But we need to do much more, and especially in Africa and India, where demand for ECHO is so high, and especially now as the COVID-19 pandemic further strains health systems in these places. In Africa, 33 hub partners in 14 African countries operate ECHO programs in areas such as HIV, epi-surveillance, and laboratory strengthening. In 2020, these partners trained over 50,000 program participants.
When COVID started in Namibia, we were not starting from ground zero. We had ECHO already that has been running since 2015. Within a short period of time, we had managed to train hundreds of healthcare providers in COVID case management, infection prevention and control. We also used ECHO to provide continuity of care. So clinical cases could still be coming. Even when there was a lockdown, cases could still be discussed and patients were still being managed.
Operations in India began in 2008. Through ECHO India branch office in Delhi, 47 hub partners operate programs with state and national institution partners. They've trained hundreds of thousands of participants, including for COVID-19 response, helping millions of patients.
Well, we had these networks, so when Corona or COVID struck, we leveraged these networks and used them, and I'm very happy to report that we have trained over 330,000 healthcare workers in COVID, and that was simply by leveraging our existing networks.
Yet, more needs to be done. In Africa, the pandemic has disrupted routine care and treatment for conditions like HIV and TB, as well as screening for cancer and other diseases. These indirect impacts will have dire long-term results on community and global health unless they are addressed now. India's need for quality healthcare is immense. With 1.3 billion people, India carries 20% of the world's disease burden. Health disparities between rural and urban areas are stark. And now that we have a vaccine, we must prepare a global vaccine workforce. In addition to providing massive training to health workers, we will need to build trust with communities so that they agree to get vaccinated. We want to scale up ECHO in Africa and India to meet the immediate threat of COVID-19 while building a strong foundation for stronger and more resilient health systems over the long term. These are the systems needed to address future pandemics and eliminate healthcare disparities. With your backing, Project ECHO can have massive impact. With a $1 million investment, we will train 30,000 healthcare workers in India or Africa. With $5 million, we will train 150,000 healthcare workers. And with a $10 million investment, we can train 300,000 healthcare workers and help strengthen health systems. At ECHO, we have a goal of touching 1 billion lives by ensuring that all people, regardless of where they live, can get the care they need when they need it. And we invite you to join us and our partners on our mission of saving and improving lives around the world.
Thank you, Project ECHO. I would now like to welcome founder and director Sanjeev Arora, Chief of Staff Elizabeth Cluett, and Associate Director Dr. Bruce Struminder to discuss Project ECHO's work. Again, these questions have been compiled by MacArthur after accepting submissions from everyone participating today. Welcome, team. One of the things that we'd like to start is to understand a bit of the structure of Project ECHO. In the video, you talked about hubs and spokes. You also have something called centers of excellence. Could you clarify what centers of excellence means?
First of all, thank you, Cecilia, for this opportunity. And a center of excellence is an organization, usually an academic medical center, a ministry of health. It could be a large NGO that has a group of experts that have a desire to share and democratize their knowledge. But what makes them unique is that they use a guided practice model to assist providers in their community to implement best practices for improving health. So this is not like a webinar. It's much more like you're trying to teach your daughter to drive a car. You do guided practice. So the Center of Excellence adopts ECHO as a mindset, an approach, a process, and a set of tools for sharing complex knowledge in a way that builds new skills in a workforce. And that's what we call a hub. Now, what happens, of course, over time is that these learners, what we call spoke organizations, usually 25, 30 at a time, gradually gain increasing expertise and can also become centers of excellence in their own right. What I'd like to do is request my colleague, Dr. Bruce Struminger, to just talk a little bit about how this model has worked in Africa. Bruce?
Thank you, Sanjeev, and thank you, Cecilia. Project ECHO was designed to align training, mentoring, and knowledge sharing with local medical needs and resources. Our partner-driven approach to growth means potential partners come to us, whether they're academic medical centers, ministries of health, NGOs, with their own country and population-specific health challenges that they wish to use the ECHO model to solve. At the program level, the ECHO model's all teach, all learn approach ensures that the specialist knowledge and best practices and treatments are adapted to the specific resource, geographic, and cultural context of the participants at the local community sites.
So in the hub and spoke system, are the spokes trained medical personnel, or could they also be community health workers?
Elizabeth, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Arora. So traditionally, you have the medical experts and then the hubs. The participants really depend on what the program is focused on. So sometimes it may be physicians or nurses, as you're saying, but very often in many parts of the world, that may be community health workers or public health professionals. And here in New Mexico, we have a long tradition of community health workers serving the community. We've developed programs specific to support community health workers. And as we've sort of developed globally, especially in India and Africa, we've begun to bring that model to those areas. In India, we've worked with ASHA workers who are really on the ground serving the communities day after day. And there, it's been a very powerful model to provide ongoing mentorship for ASHA workers in their communities. And we've seen great success there. Thank you.
Thank you. So this question is about priorities and how do you go about setting them? You have priorities between the US and the rest of the world, priorities among what countries you will work in, priorities about what diseases or medical conditions you're going to work on. Could you talk a little bit about any or all of those?
Sure, Cecilia. So we in Albuquerque at the ECHO Institute don't tell anyone what knowledge to transfer, where new skills need to be built. It is the ministries of health in the countries. They are academic medical centers, often belonging to the government, medical experts, large NGOs. They come to us because they see a need in their community. And the need they see is to train more people on how to treat TB or how to treat HIV, or more recently, COVID, or to better screen for cancer or treat substance abuse disorders in the United States. Our role is to give them the tools so they can dramatically expand the size of their workforce to solve local challenges. So it's local experts solving local challenges. And this is exactly how the prioritization system of ECHO occurs. Similarly, with countries, in order to be sustainable, we have to engage governments. And our priorities are the priorities of local governments. And we enable them to do what we do with the tools and other training and software, etc.
Thank you. Thank you, Project ECHO. This is just amazing work, and we wish you very good luck in this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecilia.
Have you heard the term news desert? It's a community completely cut off from basic, sufficient news coverage. And there are 1,800 of them in the US. No one to tell their stories, hold their leaders accountable, provide basic information about schools of sanitation, public health, how to get a COVID-19 test. Beyond the deserts, many more parts of the country are served by ghost newsrooms with slashed budgets that leave little room for local coverage. Report for America has no smaller goal than putting a reporter in every community in the United States. These reporters view local news as a public service. A crisis of information turns into a crisis of democracy. When people pay attention to local issues, civic engagement improves. Voter registration goes up. Better information gets out. To introduce Report for America, I'm pleased to welcome President and CEO of the Knight Foundation, Alberto Ibargüen. Alberto is the former publisher of the Miami Herald and El Nuevo Herald, and we are honored to have him join us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Those of us who grew up in the second half of the 20th century came to think of news and information as ubiquitous and free, or nearly free. We didn't have to think much about the critical role of news in keeping a democratic republic because reliable news was common as air and water, and then it wasn't. We don't have time today to chart the decline of news and journalism, but think of it as parallel to the stunning decline of trust in American institutions and the rise of divisiveness in our body politic. Yale professor Timothy Snyder recently observed that without agreement on some basic facts, citizens cannot form civil society. If we lose the institutions that produce facts that are pertinent to us, then we tend to wallow in abstractions and fictions. One of the causes he identified, and one that might surprise some of you, though I'm totally in agreement with him, was the loss of local news. News a reader can comprehend and maybe even fact check. News distinct from the national shouting match of unverifiable accusations. Professor Snyder joins a growing chorus focusing on the revival, not of newspapers, but of the news at the local level. Having been at this with Knight Foundation for the last 16 years, I've seen many and different attempts to tackle local news and to engage local community foundations and donors to support local news. One of our biggest investments at Knight, and among the most promising models, is Report for America. They are not only informing community, they're building community. They partner with existing newsrooms and innovative startups to do essential local journalism. Report for America is evolving a business model that we think is sustainable by engaging local community foundations and donors in support of news that matters locally and personally. By doing verification journalism, they are helping to rebuild trust and enact broad-based support that ensures independent journalism. Thanks to the MacArthur Foundation and 100&Change for inspiring the remarkable problem-solving initiatives we've heard about this afternoon. All of them are programs and initiatives that are sustainable and goals achievable if you have an informed citizenry and an engaged community, but I fear not without both. We will not make progress on schools, cleaner air, or even know our neighbors unless we have good local reporting that shares that knowledge generally. And we can't combat misinformation about public health or polarization in our politics without a common base of facts and shared experiences. In short, this is about saving our representative democracy, and that's why you need the news. Technology and the social habits of Americans have changed so much that the business models that used to work and bring us the news simply don't work anymore. Research out of the University of North Carolina, which is what Cecilia was referring to, has documented the growing number of news deserts that include inner city neighborhoods, suburban towns, villages across the country, completely devoid of the local news and of news as a trusted institution. So, like so many brilliant innovations, Report for America grew out of an obvious need. The work was necessary and the work wasn't being done. It had become easier to find out what was going on in Kurdistan, Tibet, or Paris than to know how your local Board of Education voted or why. The work just wasn't being done, and Report for America came up with a way to do it. I'll leave you with just one example of the power of that kind of work. Amelia Farrell Nisley is a Report for America young reporter at the Mountain State Spotlight. She wrote about the impact of COVID-19 on child hunger in West Virginia. Her stories caused the Department of Agriculture to put up $24 million state-run food banks. You can't always get that kind of direct cause and effect, but Report for America members have covered stories about healthcare access, school reform, racial justice, the environment, and also just plain stories about what's happening down the street and in neighborhoods all over town. Knight Foundation was an early and proud supporter of Report for America. We still are, and we urge you to join us in support of democracy. Thank you.
When I see just how horribly divided and polarized the country is, and how much misinformation there is that is leading to this division, it just makes me more convinced than ever that a key part of the solution is rebuilding local news. Local news is collapsing. Communities are becoming news deserts. And in the absence of trusted local news sources, people are flooded with misinformation. Even before COVID-19, the number of reporters had declined 60% since 2000. During the pandemic, some 36,000 newspaper employees have been laid off, furloughed, or had their pay cut. And 50 local news outlets have been permanently closed. And the problem is about to get worse. The vacuum in local news is being replaced by thousands of partisan websites or disinformation websites. The decline in local press leads to more polarization. The void is being filled with national news, and we view each other as political stereotypes instead of neighbors with potentially common interests. Through 100&Change, Report for America will help restore local news, leaving a permanent impact for generations to come. Report for America is a national service program that places talented emerging journalists into local newsrooms to report on undercovered communities and topics like education, criminal justice, public health, racial equity, and local government.
Educators recognize that kids who fell off from attending virtual classes are at a great disadvantage for the upcoming school year.
Our core members are full-time employees of the news organizations they're matched with. That could be daily newspapers, public radio stations, nonprofit websites, public TV, weekly newspapers. And they receive training and mentorship and networking opportunities. These are reporters living in those communities, not just parachuting in, becoming part of the neighborhood and being known and seen by the residents there and covering the issues that are really important to people in those communities. All core members are also required to lead a media-related community service project, often working in middle schools and high schools. Report for America will revive the idea that local reporting is a public service.
So we started getting these warnings on the back of our water bill.
Do you know anybody who drinks the water?
No.
Nobody?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Report for America does not build new news organizations, but rather we tap into existing newsrooms nationwide. This makes our model very scalable. We leverage a unique 3-to-1 funding match model, promoting new ways to encourage shared investment in local journalism, sustaining watchdog reporting for the communities that need it most. $1 million in donations, for instance, can launch a themed corps, fielding more than 30 corps members reporting on health or environment or local government or other topics. Or a geographic corps supporting a particular news desert, like the Mississippi Delta or the Upper Midwest. $5 million can support 15 sustainability coaches to train 650 newsroom partners. $10 million can help us scale to 1,000 core members by 2023, a year earlier than planned, getting those local reporters to the communities right away that need them most. We will place over 2,500 talented emerging journalists in over 750 local newsrooms nationwide, virtually eliminating America's biggest news deserts by producing hundreds of thousands of stories for those communities each year. We'll field about 1,000 journalists of color in America's newsrooms in 6 years, a dramatic accomplishment and change in the nature of local journalism, and advance other forms of diversity, creating a seismic shift in representation in newsrooms. The core members will lead thousands of service projects with high school and middle school students. They will guide some 50,000 young people in creating their own journalism and media. If local residents view journalism as an essential civic good, we can improve local reporting through local philanthropy. We're at a very historic moment. To help us repair our democracy, we have to repair the system for gathering information and providing it to people in their communities in a way that is accurate and trusted and really attending to their needs and the issues they care most about.
Thank you for that presentation, Report for America. I am now going to welcome the team. President and co-founder Stephen Waldman, Vice President of Core Excellence, Allison Bethel McKenzie, and Vice President of Development and Communications, Laura McCowan. Thank you to all of you today who have submitted questions in advance. We're going to get right to them. I wrote these cards. I thought it was like Miss America a little bit. So let's see. First one. How many core members stay in journalism after they finish their RFA tenure? And if you also know, how many of them continue to work in news deserts?
Hi, Cecilia. I'll take that question. So all of our graduates have remained in journalism, and the vast majority of them have remained in local journalism. We see their commitment to local journalism from the onset. 90% of them that complete 1 year sign up for a second year in the program. For example, Eric Shelton became the first photojournalist hired by Mississippi Today. He did tremendous work in Mississippi, really chronicling the lives of people in that state. And they hired him after he graduated. Katie Cohen, who was a core member at Charleston, West Virginia Gazette Mail, and who helped break an investigative story on polluted drinking water, also was hired after her graduation from the program. We have a number, while we have not yet calculated the numbers in news deserts, we do have a number of journalists who have left the program, graduated, who are working in news deserts.
Thank you. Given the current trend of under-resourced local newsrooms, how do you partner with and support their efforts for sustainability?
I'd love to answer that. Well, first of all, the model that we start out with is that we pay half the salary for the reporter in the first year. And then we work with the newsroom to raise the other half of the salary. So we're helping their budget and their operations right away. And then we work with them to help raise the rest. And Lauren, you want to elaborate on that?
Sure thing. Thanks, Steve. So as Steve was saying, we work with them to raise the other half of the salary. And really what we're seeing is that they're going above and beyond. We partner them with local sustainability coaches across the country who work with them hand in hand on everything from how do you develop a grassroots donor campaign for the first time to how do you partner with a community foundation or a major donor in your community that might want to help. And we actually released new data this morning showing the latest on this front. We are partnering with local newsrooms across the country who have this year raised 61% more per core member, per reporter this year than they did last year, which to me is really exciting. In the middle of a pandemic and a time of great economic uncertainty, that these newsrooms are really stepping up and asking their communities to be a part of this, and that communities are really seeing the value of those newsrooms up close and personal. Just one example, in Western Mass, not far from where I am right now, a small family-owned newspaper there, the Berkshire Eagle, tested out their very first direct mail fundraising campaign this year. They'd never asked the community for support before, so they weren't sure what was going to happen. Hundreds of checks came in, resulting in tens of thousands of dollars for that particular newspaper, something they just really didn't expect. And so now they're counting on philanthropy as a core part of their business model, in addition to ad revenue and subscriptions. And they've really been able to take that and run with it. They've hired their first ever development staffer, and we're really excited to see that trend playing out across the country.
That is good news. Talk a little bit about how you identify your newsrooms and how you match RFA reporters to those newsrooms.
Well, we run 2 national competitions a year, one for newsrooms and one for core members. We do a great job of judging, due diligence, interviews. We enlist the help of dozens of external judges, as well as our own staff member, to make sure that we pick the best of the best. For newsrooms, we look for one really important thing. Is there really an important gap in coverage where they are? We also look for newsrooms that have the editing and leadership ability to really get the journalists started right away. You mentioned earlier news desert. One of the things we also look for is whether or not there's a news desert. And by news desert, I mean a community, it could be urban or rural, who is without a newspaper or any source of news. For core members, we really look for emerging journalists who have a sense of service, who view local journalism as service. And this year, I'm excited to say, we received 1,800 applications for 100 spots, which basically means a 5% acceptance rate. We make sure that core members get off the ground running as soon as they arrive in their communities so that they can have immediate impact in their communities. It's important to remember that this is not a fellowship. It's not an internship. These journalists are full-time reporters in their communities. Our core members are really a movement. It's a movement to restore local journalism from the ground up.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. And this is, what in 5 years do you predict the news and media landscape will look like due to Report for America's work?
Well, 600,000 stories. 600,000 stories is what the 2,500 reporters will produce in hundreds of different newsrooms around the country. And in those, they are experienced reporters, usually with a few years of experience of going into the field so they can hit the ground running. And they come from a wide range of backgrounds. 1,000 will be journalists of color, some will be military veterans. Many will be from the communities that they're serving. And they'll be doing all sorts of local stories like what Michelle Liu did at Mississippi Today, where she basically discovered a spike in deaths in the Mississippi prison system. Which was then had to be addressed by the state. Or it could be what's going on right now, where dozens of our reporters are covering communities of color and providing them really accurate, trustworthy information about COVID vaccines in communities that are not having high enough vaccination rates. And we're doing this not just by putting people into existing newspapers, but also by building up new news organizations, nonprofit news organizations, public radio, Black newspapers, family-owned papers. So we're trying to create a better system than has existed before, not just go back to the way it was. And we also do this by strengthening the business model. We have to change the economics of local news. And we do this by helping them to do what we call the third revenue stream, which is basically donations from the community itself to support it. So $100 million going into Report for America actually triggers $141 million in local donations to support the journalism. And all in all, we think that the result of this is a powerful counterforce against misinformation and polarization. The best way to counter misinformation is to flood the zone with truthful, factual, accurate information done by people in the community, not by some foreign off villain, but by a neighbor. And if we do that, we will have stronger communities and a healthier democracy.
Thank you. Thank you again, Report for America. And best of luck to you and to all of the finalists who've participated today. This has been an inspiring and an enlightening experience. Now, I'd like to welcome Robin Calder-Harawi of Elma Philanthropies to discuss additional opportunities for funding these incredible projects. Robin.
Thank you, Cecilia. And hi, everyone. I'm Robin, and I'm the executive director of the Elma Foundation, which is focused on improving the lives of children in Africa. And this has been so inspiring to learn about 3 of the 6 finalists today. All 6 of the finalists have been through a really rigorous vetting and iteration process with global experts. And in my view, they really all deserve to get funded, although we know only one of them will get the $100 million from MacArthur. So my hope is that today we can, as funders, we can learn about the different projects and hopefully pool our resources so that for the 5 that don't get the $100 million, that they will still get funding from some of us. So due to Elma's interest in Africa, and improving the lives of children, we have a particular interest in Project ECHO. We have, with many of you who are here today, we have funded Project ECHO in the context of COVID to rapidly scale up the ECHO hubs that we heard about today, so that best practices in COVID diagnosis and treatment and now vaccinations can be rolled out in real time across the world to some of the most remote locations. And the request to MacArthur, the 100 million that's been requested through this competition, would go to roll out this training to millions, from hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers to millions of healthcare workers in Africa and India. And with the potential to not only respond to COVID, but also to sustainably uplift the quality of healthcare in those regions. So of course we want Project ECHO to get the full 100 million for this transformative work. But if they don't get it, we're really keen to put together a donor collaborative to ensure that the work gets funded. And ELMA would be more than happy to help play a coordinating role in this. And really to close, not many of us are willing or able to make a single $100 million bet like MacArthur is. Thank you, MacArthur. But if we pool our funding together, whether it's $1 million for a 5-year project, or combining that with a 10 million contribution, together we can get these ambitious projects funded and on the path to achieving their transformative goals. So that's really my goal. I hope that we all, learn about these different projects and connect together and reconvene as funders for the 5 that might not win the 100 million from MacArthur. So thank you, Cecilia, and I'm over to you, John.
Well, before we go to John, let me just say thank you, Robin. We had a great working relationship with ELMA with the first 100&Change in one of our finalists, where we were able to pull together a donors collaborative. And I'm happy to announce that for each of the finalists here today, we have a donor present who is willing to make a similar statement about their commitment to trying to help them make these projects a reality. So please join us in the donor networking session to learn more about that opportunity. I'm going to turn us now back over to John Palfrey, president of the MacArthur Foundation, for final remarks and to let us know more about the post-program plans. Thank you all. Welcome, John.
Cecilia, thank you. You're amazing. Please, everyone, imagine we are in an auditorium together and join me in a huge round of applause for this program. Thank you. Thank you, finalists. Thank you, experts. Thank you, Robin and Elma, for standing up in this way. Thank you, Cecilia, and your team. You have been just wonderful. And Cecilia, I just have to reiterate your point about getting hope by reading these applications is exactly how I've spent a lot of my time during the COVID pandemic. So thanks to everybody for providing that hope. We all together just spent an hour listening to real world solutions to some of our most critical challenges, and it all seems achievable. One of the 6 finalists will receive a grant from MacArthur Foundation for $100 million to scale their project, to make real and measurable progress in the lives of the communities they highlighted today. And never has their work been more important or your investment more necessary. We are living through multiple global crises, a public health pandemic, economic collapse, and a racial reckoning that calls on us to dismantle the structures and practices that uphold systemic racism. Climate change touches every aspect of our way of life. It is harder for the average person to separate truth from fiction in their news feeds, and the bonds of social trust are frayed. It is in this moment that we most need hope. And that is what we got to experience today. These solutions are possible. Because of their ideas and your action, we can all dare to hope. I want to thank the finalists for the opportunity to envision together a better world and for their work in working to make it happen. You have given us the opportunity to be bold in the service of a more just, equitable, and resilient future. There are so many opportunities to support and invest in these compelling ideas to accelerate social change. And I also want to thank the early funders who got these teams where they are today, all the judges and advisors who helped our finalists hone their proposals, and all of you throughout the year who helped connect new donors with worthy projects. This community is connected by common values, the belief that we can get together and do some good. Seize this opportunity to be as involved as possible in this work. Make today the beginning of your engagement with these projects and not the end. We are here because we're already fully focused on the power of thinking big. And 2020 showed us exactly how big we need to think. This is the moment to help build the bold, creative, inclusive world we want to create. This is a time to trust data and science, to trust each other, and to honor our shared humanity. Thank you again for creating this space to be hopeful, to be optimistic in our vision, resolute in measuring our impact, and to create meaningful change in the world.